Alright. Mic check, mic check, mic check, mic. Hold on. Okay, there we. Yeah, it's working. Alright, good. Game desktop sound's not working. 1 second. Let me fix that. Why is it using default device? Never use default device in OBS. Why is that window so big? Okay. Alright. Okay, that's better. Oh, what? Hold on. Okay. Welcome back. Okay, there we go. We're ready. We're ready. We're not quite ready yet. Hold on. We got some weird bug going on with a legitimate program and Unreal Engine. Hold on. Whoops. Sorry about that. My mic was muted. I'll type that in the chat. Alright. Oh, yeah, sure. Restream chat just logged me out. That's wonderful. Why did it do that? Why? Not like I just did that. Okay, 1 second. I need to get my stream chat back. Where's Bitwarden? I always use a password protection. Here we go. Why did that open up on the main screen? Nobody tried logging into my Bitwarden, please. Okay, restream. There we go. Copy this stupid password. Paste that. Login. And do the captcha. Oh my god, that's a horrible captcha. Oh, and there's two. Why? 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 Okay. And then, oh, that's good. Yeah, it's still loading. I don't know if it's gonna finish loading. So. Okay. Screw it. It's not use plastic, I guess. I'm going to show you guys how to set up your repo right now. So don't worry about this. I'm remoting into a server that I have pretty much. It's just a spare laptop that I've got running. And it's all locally run, so that's good. But you should always have some sort of spare backup. Anyway, so in case you're wondering, this is the same laptop that I got my Discord bots running. I don't know what that is. That's not the secret, in case you're wondering. It's just some session thing. Okay. Anyway, so what we're gonna do, let's see here, Visual SVN. So once you got Visual SVN installed, you're gonna have the Visual SVN Server Manager. Of course, you don't have to use the visual one. Like I said, the visual one. Let's see here. Where's the license information? There we go. Compare available license. So, like I said, Visual SVN is free for up to only 15 users, but it can get kind of expensive if you get more and more users. But it comes with a very nice interface that's very easy to use. So what I'm going to do here, oh boy, is first thing you want to set up a user. So these are if you other users I've worked on with some other people in the past, you just go here, create a new user. enter in a username and a password, and that's what you'd use to log in. So next what we're going to do is go to repositories and create a new repository. We're going to go with a regular one because this one is much more complicated. So go with a regular repository. We'll call it live game. That's the project name that we're going to be doing. Okay. And then keep it an empty repository for game development unless you have a reason for using those folders. Then we're going to go customize permission and just give myself permission. So there you go. And then rewrite access. Okay. You could also just keep it as everybody has it or not. You can keep that on or off. It doesn't matter too much. I keep it on. And all right, there we go. So then we have this nice repo here. It actually just prints your IP address. So if I go into like here, you can see what the IP address is. Unfortunately, I don't want you to see my IPv6 address. So there we go. Okay, nice and simple. All right. So there we go. We got the project set up. So let me show that off now. Close out the Unity store here. There we go. Okay, so something else that you should set up, I didn't show this, is that it does support SSL. So here we go. This is the Cat Smash repo, and this is the one that we just made. As you can see, it's encrypted. So there's some settings in Visual SVN that you can use to set up, get like a certificate and stuff. This would be especially important if you plan on hosting a remote server. But it's not entirely secure because they didn't set up the certificate entirely correctly. But that doesn't matter too much. So the point is we have the game now, and then we could change password if we want to, but we're not going to do that. So right now it's empty because we don't have any code in it. So the first thing that we are going to be doing is adding project code pretty much. All right. So back to progress. So let's see here. We're going to go with a basic complete, let's do to do and then complete. There we go. Nice and easy one note, creating a table for us. There we go. And then fold that. Alright, so to do. Let's see here. Let's do complete though first. So install software. Alright, that's done. What else? Set up repo. Let me check Unity store again. Oh, got it. Yeah, sure. Just casually reset all the options here. Okay, I'm gonna give up on Classic SCM. If you want to try that out, and tell me how it goes, you can, but it was for whatever reason not loading. Alright, anyway, so there we go. Install software, set up the repo, make a plan. Oops, that went on to the wrong side. There's probably better tools to keep track of progress management than using OneNote, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to be using this for developing the game. Alright, so to do, we need to make the project. Basic project. Oh, look who showed up. Wonder if, let me check here real quick. No, not quite. I got a cat on my lap. Alright, so make project basic, create assets, there we go. Project config, alright. And then after that we need to make levels. We need to, okay, I need to make UI. Oops, cat's going on my desk. Alright. Here we go. Now you can see the cat. He's hungry. I'm gonna feed the kitten. Yes. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Okay, there we go. No, 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 no. You don't touch the phone. Stop it. No, no, no. This cat likes to sit around all over the place. Alright. Anyways, make levels, make UI. We need some blueprint code. Alright, there we go. And yeah, that's we'll start with that just for now. We'll expand the to-do list later on with more specific items as we begin to properly develop the game. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to finish up this live stream shortly because I need to feed the cats. Don't worry, they're patient cats. All right, so there you go. We got that done. All right, so next up, we're gonna go open up the Epic Games Launcher, or if you're on Linux, there's I believe Epic Asset Manager or something like that. You can do that as well. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'll be using Unreal Engine 5.2. Let's look at install plugins here. So I have the Visual Studio integration tool. Quixel Bridge comes by default, so you can keep that if you want, or remove it. We won't be using the Quixel Bridge in this project, but it's the Quixel Bridge is an amazing resource for very high fidelity models and textures and materials. So for mobile development though, it's ideal not to necessarily use such. And then the Visual Studio integration tool is a recent actually plugin that incorporates directly with Visual Studio, which is handy for C++ development. But for this game that we're making, I don't plan on doing really anything in C++. Maybe later on for some of the core components, but that wouldn't be necessary. Alright, so I'm going to look at 5.1 here because I have a few more plugins here. Let's see here, we got some old stuff I never really used that much. Magic Node, I've looked into that kind of. But if you want to program C++, it's better to just do it in like Visual Studio than using the plugin because it's kind of confusing. A few other stuff, we could add them if we wanted to. Of course, I'd have to update to 5.2, which only came out like last week or so. Yeah, so a bunch of handy plugins that I've gone over the years. In case you're wondering, we go to the marketplace here. You can see all the plugins, all sorts of different plugins and all sorts of different assets that you can use. Creating another portal, that could be interesting to use for this project, but yeah, there's free for the month, so that's where I get a lot of stuff actually. And only like once did something that I had in my library get taken down due to like legal issues or something like that. Yeah, just make sure when you're, even though you know you have like a plugin or an asset that you got from the marketplace, it's still a good idea to double check that you have usage permission, or at least publishing permission, to use it in a published project. But we're not going to be worrying about the plugins. We're just going to be going with the base engine right now. I'm going to click launch, and here we go. Alright, it's going to be, it might, if it's your first time installing Unreal Engine 5.2, there might be a shader compilation step beforehand. That might take a while, but I've worked with it recently, so we don't have to worry about that. So what I'm going to do is let's find a good place to put my project. So it's not the most important that you put it on a hard drive or an SSD, but I'm just going to put it on an SSD for a nice quick and easy access. Ideally you want to put it in a path that has few characters. So this is the B drive / UE5 underscore projects. And also ideally you don't want any spaces in the path as well, because that could screw up later on with building the project and depending on which plugins we use. So I'm going to go here, create a new folder, call it live game. So we're going to save the game to there. We're going to copy the path, click cancel actually, and then put the project location games. Okay, here we go. This is a link. Sorry about that. All right, there we go. Okay, live game right there. There we go. Call it live game, and it will auto use the folder. So yeah, what we want to do is we want to go here, games. Let's go with, since we're going with a mobile game, it could do a top-down template, but I think we're just going to stick with the blank project. All right. What else? Starter content. We're not going to go opt with starter content. You could if you wanted to. There's a lot of basic but fairly old VFX models, textures, and stuff like that in the starter content. But for this project, I'm not really going to be using that, so I'm going to exclude it. Quality preset, we want it to be scalable so that it can work on mobile pretty much. So scalable can work well on low-end hardware like mobile devices, and then could scale up to larger high-quality devices, though we won't be worrying about that. All right, so once you got that, just click create, and then here we go. And then we can go make project basic and move that over to the complete section. Though it's not quite complete yet. So again, if this is your first time opening Unreal Engine, there probably would be a little shader compilation step. Alright, so here we go. This is the project. This is what would open up. This window might not necessarily open up. And also this content browser might be closed right here. So the first thing, just in case you're curious, if you press Control Space, opens up the content browser right there, and I like to dock in the layout right there because that was how it was in Unreal Engine 4. Also, another thing that might not be open at first is the Place Actors panel. So to do that, you just click right there and then Place Actors right there. So again, that's just based off of what Unreal Engine 4's layout is. I sort of adapted my window layout to match that. Maybe you want a Unity layout or something like that. You could do that as well. You can customize the windows. You can drag them around. I don't know, if you want the outliner in the middle right there or something, you can do that. I like to keep it like this. That's just personal preference. All right. So the very first thing we're going to do is connect our version control. So let's try this. See if this works. I don't know if it's going to work actually. So put the... Actually, let's go look over here. So if you go right here, this is Visual SVN. Check out. So you want some sort of URL. For SVN, it's usually just this. For GitHub, it usually ends in .git. So you can do GitHub right there. You can do Plastic, Perforce if you really like Perforce. That's the default within Unreal Engine. You could also work outside of Unreal Engine's source control, revision control options as well if you have, like, I don't know, something else that you want. So yeah, we just put in, then you put in your username. Oops, that's not it. There we go. And then put in password. And then as for the labels directory, usually just you can keep that blank. Labels are just another way of like identifying commits, I believe. I'm not entirely sure what they are for actually SVN, but leaving them blank is fine. And then if we click accept settings, failed to connect to reversion control. So is not a working copy. So there's actually another step that you need to do before you do that. So live game here. Here's our project layout. I'll go over this right after going over how to initially set up your repo. So what we're going to do is you should have Tortoise SVN or something else installed, some sort of client program manager if you're working with SVN. So what we're going to do is we're going to SVN checkout. All right, and just copy the file path that we had previously. So we're going to check out our repo. It's currently an empty repo pretty much. So gonna keep all that good. Check out depth. So this is how much you want to check it out. There were files in there. And the revision, if we had different revisions or different commits pretty much, we could select a specific one, but so the head revision is the most recent one, so I'll just go with that. Just click OK, and there we go, add revision 0. So now we should, okay, not quite yet. Okay, so gotta go import, sorry about that. All right, so go import, here we go. So now if we import the repo instead of committing it, okay, there we go. So what the import just did, if I check back here, what? Hold on. Seems kind of... okay. Didn't quite work. Sorry about that, the cats are playing right now. Usually that would work. Okay, let's go check back on here. Ah, okay. So it seems like it did work, which is kind of weird. Alright, so we got a few too many files here right now. Not sure what that empty live game folder. Oh, that's weird. Oh. I messed that up. Okay. So let's go back into the top directory. Check out directory so we can check the files out. Check out it's a non-empty folder. Go ahead. Alright, we got some conflicts to deal with conflicts. Not sure why there are conflicts, but let's go right click. So now, okay, this is good. So as you can see, we can delete this folder because it's not necessary. Alright, we got this .svn folder, so that is how we know that we got the source control set up. So you do it again, you check out on the root directory, and you make sure that the file path is good. So we're gonna fix that merge conflict. Okay, never mind, there's no merge conflict, so that's whatever. Alright. So we got the project initially set. Let's get the revision control file as. So there's going to be some extra files that we don't want synced up constantly. So these are device specific or like computer specific temporary files, stuff like that. So this would be the derived data cache, intermediate, saved, and also binaries folder. And then there's a few others as well, but we're not going to worry about them necessarily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the folder, Taurus SVN, and unreversion and add to ignore list. So just do the root folder. Intermediate, do the same thing. We'll do this one recursively just in case we have some plugins later on. And then saved. There we go. And then let's also check in our config. Okay, that's all good. So now, last thing to do, here we go, svn commit. So committing is sending all the changes, sending all the recent updates and whatnot to the server. So we're going to do init commit, so that's the initialization of the commit, the initialization of the project, and then we're also going to do add ignores. There we go. So as you can see, we have a nice changelog here. So the way that SVN works is that there are version and non-version files. Non-version files are files that aren't included on the repo. Luckily, when you commit either in Taurus SVN or even Unreal Engine, usually, new files that get added are automatically versioned unless you ignore them or you delete them. So as you can see, we have a bunch of deleted files. If we uncheck it, then the change won't go through. It will remain whatever the previous version was on the server. And yeah, one thing to note is that unlike in GitHub, when you push or Git in general, there's a .gitingor file that you also commit. In SVN, you don't necessarily have that. It's all the configuration is stored in this hidden.svn file here. And it's automatically synced up pretty much. So there we go. Just delete the folders at revision 2. So now if we check back on, okay, check back onto our repo here. So if I drag the window out, okay. There we go. There we go. And then, oh, that's weird. Okay, so we got this extra live game folder. We can remove that as well. Sorry about that. There you go, gotta scratch right. Nice. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, the files are deleted and there's our change right there. Alright, so last thing to do with version control for now is we go back to Unreal Engine and let's try reconnecting right now. There we go, that is good. And then in Unreal Engine, when we have changes, we can click submit content. That's our log. Don't worry about that. Okay, and then as you can see, you don't have anything to check in, so we're good for now. All right, next up, let's make sure we got the plugins. So let's see here. We got some fancy installed plugins. We got the Visual Studio Integration Tools. So that's the extra stuff that I installed. We don't need to worry about that. All right, so let's go back to the plan here. Yes, the plan. So we're going to be doing a multiplayer game, and we're going to be targeting mobile. So with that in mind, we need to be looking for mobile-specific plugins. So let's see here. Input, enhanced input. So enhanced input is the new input managing system that was added recently in, I believe, Unreal 5.1. It will be working with that. I have to actually work with it myself before doing it on stream. Luckily, there's an older system that we can still use. It still works pretty fine. All right, what else we got? We got input devices. No fancy input devices, so nothing to worry about that. What else we got? Let's see, geometry. I don't need hair for a mobile game. Ooh, let's see here. All right, so there's a lot of different plugins here. Oftentimes, maybe, for example, SQLite, you want to do some database work. The plugin's already there. Hold on. The plugin's already there, available for you. We got some AR plugins. We got some automation plugins, animation plugins. Sorry. So Unreal Engine is just a suite of a lot of different applications. No, it's a single application, but a suite of different tools, pretty much. So you can animate in it, you can model in the engine, you can program, you can do 2D and 3D technically. What we are going to be doing is mobile, so I'm looking right here in the Android plugins. We already have all the Android plugins checked. Likely they were actually enabled when we initially set up the project because we selected mobile as our target. So you got a lot of that stuff. If you want to look into AI, there's AI support already enabled in Unreal Engine, so we'll be looking into how the AI works. And then analytics, if you want to collect data, I guess you can do that. All right, what else we got? We got all sorts of stuff. We got this common UI. We can enable that, sure, why not? The common UI is the newest sort of AI system. So, okay, it's good to make sure that we have, initial plugins up and ready. One thing that I will check here. There we go. Google Play. Okay, so we have iOS and we have Google Play already there. So I think we're actually good with the plugins. We have the replication system. I don't know what the iris system is exactly, but we don't need that. We'll just use the replication. Yeah, I think we're good with the plugins. I'm gonna not restart now. We only have the common UI enabled. All right, so there we go. We got the our plugins double checked. Now next up, yes, the project settings. Let's look into this for sort of the initial settings that we're setting up. So the initial project description, you can fill this out as needed. This is more for like a finalization, final step. One thing I would note is that you probably want to fill this out because this will show up in every single C++ source file that you create if you're going to be using C++. All right. Next up, encryption. This is if you need encryption. You probably will be needing encryption, as you'll see later on with Google Play. We won't touch that for now, though. Gameplay tags. So these are just some tagging system. Not entirely sure. I guess, okay. Yeah, some tagging system to help both networking and replication, maybe. Or actor tags are a way to sort of group or identify various actors in the world. Alright, so maps and modes. So the starter map here is this wide open map here. We don't need this map though. So we're going to start off with actually creating a folder and just create maps. Alright, so start off with a main menu map. There we go. So this main menu map is going to be where we'll start off in the editor and in the game. There we go. And then save the main menu map. And then we'll submit the main menu map. Create main menu map. And then as you can see, the changes are all there, listed out. You click submit and it automatically submits up to the reversion control. Alright, so some of the notable settings right here that we'll be looking into later on. The first off is the default game mode being game mode base. We will be creating a game mode later on. I won't be doing that in this stream, we'll probably do it next stream. What the game mode is though, is pretty much the, let's go over, write some stuff down. So, there we go, boom. Alright. New project layout. Alright, so the Unreal Engine starts off with actually the game instance. Base of all games, pretty much. So the game instance is the one thing that is persistent throughout. Oh, I should probably use that one. Yeah, sure, let's use that one. Alright, so the game instance is like pretty much the core of the program. It remains persistent throughout when the program starts, and then when it closes, it destroys itself pretty much. You could store variables inside the game instance, and they will be persistent across level loads, which is pretty much the only place where variables will be persistent. Unless you use like save game objects, but that's a bit different. Alright, so game instance is the base of all games. Then we have the game mode. So this is the base of the level. We also have level, which is a level is pretty much a container of 3D objects, pretty much, and some code. Base of the level code, I guess. So within the game mode, let's look at this here. Alright, let me move that over there. Alright, so we have the default pawn. So the pawn is what the player controls. Then we have the HUD. So this is heads up display. Ideally where you draw stuff. But we'll be using something else for that. Alright, next up we have the controller. So the controller controls the pawn. What the controller essentially does is identifies unique players. Next up we have the game state. So the game state is what it pretty much sounds like. It manages the state of the game. This is going to be a little more sophisticated later on. So the game state is a good place to synchronize variables, do function calls for all players and the server. And there's many other uses. The game state is going to be important, as well as the game mode. One thing to note about the game mode is that it is server side, while the game state is server plus client side. So what this means is with the game mode, if you want any sort of logic that the players can't abuse somehow to cheat, you want that to be running on the game mode. As for the game state, it is replicated across all the different players. So if like a point gets added on the whole game, then you want something in the game state to tell all the players and the server that a point was added. There's also then the player state. So the player state is like the game state, but for specific players. So the player state contains special values like the name. There's a score as well, I believe. You don't really need to use them. These special values aren't necessarily very easy to use inside blueprints. Alright, so and then last but not least, we have spectator. Though actually there's probably a few more. Actually I think that mostly covers everything. Anyway, spectator is a pawn, but spectating pretty much. We don't have to worry too much about them. So, back to the server side, client side. So the game mode is server side. Pawns. Pawns are replicated. So what this means is that it exists on server and the client, and then it's controlled via remote procedure calls, RPCs. We'll see what this looks like later on when we start implementing our basic pawn. Alright, heads up display. This will be client side, because there's no reason to like draw over the server. So we want to, I guess, unique HUDs is what we want. Alright, the controller then is client side, but the server has all the controllers. So what this means is that your unique controller, so your unique controller, like yourself, or if you're playing a split screen game, for instance, we're not doing split screen, but that's an option. Those controllers are locally visible while the server side can see all the player controllers because it needs to know all the different players who are connected. That's how Unreal Engine identifies the players connected. They use the controllers. So the controllers then can be replicated from the server to the client, I believe. Though ideally it's better to use probably the player state and the game state for replication. So the game state is replicated server and client. And the player states, I believe, are also replicated server and client, or like the controller. I believe, though, there is a local copy of all the player states. Alright, so there we go. We got the level container, and then replication is the method of duplicating actors, objects, code running across servers plus clients. We'll look into more of the specifics of replication when we start setting up the pawn, because that will be very important for that. Alright, so there we go. We got all that done. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much the basic of the game mode. So the game mode also, one more thing, it holds the, whatever. So yeah, later on we'll be making our own custom game mode. We'll be inheriting from game mode base so that we could still maintain replication ability. This older game mode, we probably shouldn't use that. Alright, what else do we got? Global server default game mode. So this is for dedicated servers. We're not going to be focusing on a dedicated server, at least for the start, so we're going to keep that blank. If we go into advanced here, we have a transition map and we have a server default map. So these are specifically for servers. The server default map is when you start a dedicated server, it will start in the entry map. And then from there you probably want to load in like your proper game or whatnot. The transition map is a map for going between servers, I believe. Map loaded when transition from one map to another. So I guess it could be used more as a loading map or something like that. You won't worry about that. And then local multiplayer, we're not going to be doing that. I mean, it's completely unrealistic on mobile. So we're going to be not worrying about that either. Movie player. You can add a start movie. I'll make the start movie skippable. We're not going to do that because we don't have like a start movie right now. Alright, packaging. So this is for when you want to export your game. You want to package it correctly for whatever platform you're using. So we're not worried about packaging right now. So we're going to look back at that when we start exporting the game. Supported platforms. So this is more of an optimization sort of step. It's also a verification to make sure you have everything set up. So supported platforms, we're going to support Windows. Sure, why not? We're going to not support that, not support Mac, because I don't really have a Mac that can run Unreal Engine at the moment. We'll keep Linux ARM 64 and base ARM. We'll uncheck HoloLens, and we'll uncheck iOS because it is very difficult to actually develop on Windows for iOS. In fact, it's about impossible. You need Apple hardware to be doing that. All right. Next up, then we have optimized projects. So we have this is pretty much the start project settings. Don't have to change any of that. All right. Next up, we have the asset manager. So, excuse me. We don't worry too much about this. We'll keep this as the default settings, but for more complicated projects, if you want to better load or better discover or optimize your workflow inside Unreal Engine, you can add more paths in here to do that. And then asset tools, same thing as before, just sort of helping out. All right, and then we have a whole bunch of stuff in the engine here. So AI system. We'll look at the AI system when we start working with the AI. Animation, not too important. Audio. So the way Unreal Engine works with audio is that there are sound mixes, sound concurrencies, sound classes. That will be another thing. Audio subsystem. So we're looking more into that later on because there's quite a lot to it, but pretty much the audio classes sort of control the volume of different audio tracks that we'll be playing. Then the sound mix mixes all the audios together and then produces whatever end resulting output you got. All right. And then that's voice over IP, more audio stuff. Okay, Chaos Solver, keep that there. Chaos is just the new physics system that Unreal Engine has been using for like the particles and whatnot. Cinematic camera, we don't need a cinematic camera. Engine collision, now this we might need later on. So this is if you want to create more sophisticated custom collisions or trace channels for like different objects colliding with each other, for instance, then you would want to create object channels or trace channels. If we need that, I'll go over sort of how that works. I don't believe we're going to be needing that though so far. Console settings, I don't know if you want to customize the console, I guess. Control rig, we're not going to be using that. Cooking. So cooking is baking data into the game. So like the map layout, static objects and whatnot. To make it compressed, to make it load faster, stuff like that. To make it work sometimes, depending on which sort of like graphics settings you're using. We'll just keep the default. I don't think there's anything super important to do with compression. Crowd manager, we're not going to be doing any crowds. CVARs, these are just more advanced parameters for the engine. We're going to be doing that. Debug camera controller, no need to do that. Enhanced input, so we're going to be looking into this later on to set up our like default mapping contexts. We'll be looking into enhanced input in a future live stream, but we'll be definitely looking into that later on. And then editor only stuff, debugger stuff. If you want to change your debug settings, you can do that. Garbage collection, so good old C++ or also Blueprints is object oriented. There's obviously going to be some sort of garbage collection that's going to be needed. So if you want to look into those settings, you can. General settings. All right. So these are general. Okay, these are like default sort of settings that you'd use globally throughout your project. Not too super important, but if you have like a specific font that you want to set, probably good to set up here right now. We'll just stick with the default fonts, so not worry about that. Hierarchical level of detail. Don't really need to do that. And then, okay, here's the old input system. So the way that this would work was you would add an action mapping and then say W and then map it to forward. Then later on in the blueprints, you would create the corresponding event. But we're not going to be working with that quite yet, too. We're going to be doing a lot of the like input and basic setup next week. All right, what else do we got? Some interchange, landscape. We're not going to be working with landscape, so we don't have to worry about that. Mesh budget, I believe that's for more for Nanite. Working on mobile. It's going to be fairly low poly, low mesh, so I don't have to worry about that. Meta sounds, we might actually use meta sounds, that'd be interesting, are the new sound system that's been added in Unreal Engine 5. You can like make your own custom sounds and do all sorts of interesting mixing and whatnot, which could be very helpful for creating laser sounds. Alright, well, so navigation mesh is the way that the AI works. It creates a mesh that helps pretty much guide where the AI can go and whatnot. That incorporates the navigation system, of course. Then we have networking, so this is basic networking. Just keep that default. No reason to change any of that. Physics. Not going to be doing too much with physics on a mobile game, just for optimization reasons. One thing to note, if you're going to be importing models, typically you probably want to set up this default shape complexity to something that you, depending on how you make the model. Forget about what I just said. We're not going to be doing anything with that. All right. The important thing now, we're on to rendering. So, forward shading. Stick with forward shading. So forward shading is, in terms of the graphics pipeline, it's a single pass shading procedure, which helps out with getting the frames out much more sooner, much more consistent, rather than having to delay it. For this project, maybe there could be an advantage of using deferred shading for like reflections and fancy lighting stuff, but for now, we're gonna optimize for forward shading just so that it we can maximize compatibility. GPU scene. I'm not sure what that is. We'll go, I guess, mesh auto instancing. Yeah, sure, we'll enable it. Why not? And then we have to restart the engine later on. All right. So keep on off ambient occlusion, because ambient occlusion can cause quite a bit of lag. Local light support on mobile for, yeah, okay. Planar reflections. Keep that there. We might change it later on depending on how the mobile reflections ends up later on. Alright, game discards unused quality level. We can check that just to keep things nice and compressed. Keep that all the same. Occlusion culling, so that blocks meshes that can't be visible from rendering pretty much. Keep that there. Use DXT5 normal maps. We'll keep that off just in case we do have any normal maps. We want to leave them as the normal style of normal maps. This is a different format which can mess up with the lighting quite heavily. Alright, next up we have virtual texture support. We'll check that in case we have any textures. And then we'll show how to import the textures as virtual textures, which will help out with optimization, especially on a mobile device, which has limited GPU VRAM. Having virtual textures will likely help out quite a bit. Alright, moving on. So we'll keep all that same. So dynamic global illumination method, keep that at lumen, and we'll also keep the refraction method at lumen. Now default lumen global illumination is not going to work on mobile at all. So actually maybe none would be best. Yeah, this supports, yeah, okay, we'll go with no global illumination actually, because we're going to be focusing on mobile. We're going to be focusing on, later on there'll be a forward shading check that we'll have to enable. And then we just want to have the better performance. As for reflections, we're going to stick with, we're going to go with lumen reflections actually, because lumen reflections actually offer quite a lot in comparison to only going with screen space. Alright, then down here we'll keep this, we'll go to global tracing, just to a little bit of optimization there. And keep that, can't really do much there. We don't need hardware ray tracing for this game, so do that. We'll keep Nanite on. I don't know. I think Nanite is support on mobile. In which case it will optimize being able to load in a lot of models and a lot of vertices. All right, turn on forward shading right there. So that will default those settings up there. Just because there's like a specific graphics format that will be needed for forward shading. We'll do that even for desktop, just so that we can have an idea of the graphics style later on when we're developing. Alright, and then what else? VR, we're not going to be working in VR, so I'm going to skip over that. Custom depth stencil pass will enable that. Oh, excuse me. So this will help out when we want to enable it with stencil too. If we have an object that we want to show behind another object, like a player outline, for instance, then we'll be using the custom depth stencil pass to achieve something like that. All right, now moving on, auto exposure. Sure, we'll keep that on. Actually, no, we'll switch that off. Okay, motion blur. Okay, motion blur by default is off. Interesting. All right. Moving on, so these are just default post-processing settings. Just keep them at default or select whatever you want, pretty much. Alright, and then optimizations. So I suggest probably leaving these optimizations alone unless there's something specific that you are looking for. Like for instance, the, I don't know, velocity or something. Alright. Oh, we're almost gonna be wrapping up soon, don't worry. Alright, we got a few other settings down here. Substrate materials is the new experimental material system in Unreal Engine 5. We're not gonna be using that though, so don't worry about that. Then we have mobile shader stuff. We'll leave that default for now. I'm gonna sneeze a few seconds. One thing I'm gonna enable though, if I can find it. Allow static lighting. Okay, that's already enabled. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that allow static lighting was on. Because being able to bake the lighting into the level is gonna have a lot of optimization benefits. Alright, then we have a few other settings, slate settings, that's, I don't know, whatever, there's only one setting there. You can look that up if you want, I guess. Engine streaming, so this is the loading in assets and whatnot. Keep that, should probably use that, especially for mobile. Though, if the project is small enough, you probably don't need streaming. But I'll keep it on because I don't think there's any reason why to keep it off. Alright, next up we have some editor settings, so you can customize these if you want. Customize them to your liking, look at what they do and whatnot. But I'm gonna move on to right down here. Alright, platforms, Windows. So the platform settings, default RHI, we're gonna go with Vulkan. And we're gonna go with ES 3.1 because I'm gonna go with Vulkan SM5 as well. I'm gonna check SM5 too. Alright, I'm gonna go with these settings because we're gonna be targeting mobile, and Vulkan works on mobile as well as desktop. If you check Linux, actually the only one is Vulkan anyway, so I'm gonna check that too. iOS, so here's the settings for iOS. As you can see, you need to import some fancy stuff here and set it up. I can't really do that, like I said, because I don't really have an Apple device to develop on. At hand, you need Xcode, I believe it is. But what you can do is go to the Android settings. So we will be working, I believe, with Android. So you could go accept the XDK license, and we'll go configure the project now. It's doing some fancy stuff here. All right, click accept. Okay, we have accepted it. And then there's a whole bunch of settings here that we'll be configuring. We'll also configure now for the Google Play Services platform so that we can host it onto Google Play as well as do like achievements and stuff. We're going to be doing that later on though, so don't worry about that. And these are all pretty much just export settings, so we only need to be worrying about those later on. What else we got? We got Android material quality. So these are specific settings for the various material qualities if you really want to go and dive into the optimization. Something important that you want for mobile development is check the Android SDK folder and make sure you have the Android SDK components set up. So you want Java Development Kit, JDK. You want the basic Android SDK, and you also want the Android NDK. And you also need a specific version of the NDK. If I go on to, I can find it for you. So there's a specific version that Unreal Engine requires for Android. 5.2, here we go. So you can see it on the official documentation. Here we go, prerequisites. So you want debugging, create your project, set it up. Let's see here. No, not that. Android. So, okay. Yeah, this will go over sort of the how to set it up. So there's, okay, here we go. Here's what you need. So NDK, you need, okay, that's a debugger. I don't have that. You need the SDK. And then there's compatible devices. I'm going to post this into the Twitch chat, which will show up in the Discord chat. Yep, there it is. Okay. So be sure to check out the official documentation for how to get this set up. In fact, I might actually, yeah, I might need to update that. You shouldn't be too bad though. I can do that on my own. Alright, so there we go. We got the Android set up. We got that all good. And there's nothing to do in plugins, at least not right now. So I think we got the whole project set up. I'm not going to click restart now. We'll reboot the project. And then with that, I think we're going to wrap up the stream. So project config should be done. There you go. And as you can see now, we got 4,000 shaders compiled. So usually when you modify, oftentimes when you modify like certain render settings, you're going to have to sit through this compilation step, and it will definitely take a while depending on which your computer is. In case you're wondering, I got a new 5800X 3D CPU, and it is completely maxing out the CPU, or mostly maxing it out. Of course, the CPU itself has some little optimization tricks to make sure that it doesn't just like go 100% all the time, but yeah. Another thing to note is that it's not really GPU intensive, as you can see down here. So why is my stats? Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay. Alright. Alright, so go. This might take a while actually. I think we've done a pretty good job this week. Alright. Alright, let's see here, we got 2,900. Alright, I think we're gonna wrap it up, sure. Alright, so what did we do today? We set up the project pretty much. We went through, oh yeah, let's actually, why not? So actually right here, we'll go add build recursively to the ignore list as well. And then we're going to commit our changes because we didn't quite do that. So set up config, there we go. Okay, and commit failed. Oh, that's because we need to update. So just quickly update. We got no merge conflicts or anything like that. Not quite though. As you can see, we have this live game here. We don't need that. So we're gonna delete that. There we go. Okay. I think that's good. Let's try that again. Alright, so we deleted live game. The extra folder that we accidentally made before. Okay, there we go. That's fine. Here we go. So now we committed our recent changes. So I'm gonna close that out. No, don't save it. Alright, that's gonna almost wrap up. So yeah, there we go. I think we did pretty good progress today for this live stream. Next week we're gonna be starting on our blueprint codes. We're gonna start on the basic pawn. We're gonna start making a basic level. I'm gonna start getting our replication set up correctly. So yeah, it's gonna be much more exciting than the past two streams, I'll tell you that much. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Almost got the engine loaded up. Just a few more minutes. Look at the CPU again. I also got 48 gigabytes of RAM, which is kind of weird. Probably best have 64, but actually 48 is fine. I recommend 48 for like big Unreal projects. 32 is the minimum recommended for like Linux on Unreal Engine. If you have 16 gigabytes, really isn't. It's like pushing it. 8 gigabytes, that's not gonna be enough, even like for normal Windows use, in my opinion. What's the number at? Ooh, 118. Okay, we're almost there. Almost there. Trust me. And I think I've seen it before. The compile shaders back in Unreal Engine 4 goes like negatives. No. Oh, okay. Never mind. We have a second step. Yes. So the second step of compiling shaders is much more common in Unreal Engine 4 than it is in 5. And it took a lot longer before. This is getting pretty slow, actually. That shouldn't be too bad. It's only 1,000. What does compiling shaders actually do? It takes the various different shader codes, like your materials, which we'll be looking into in the future live stream. Takes like just some basic graphics backend, like the different APIs with Vulkan versus DirectX, OpenGL, which isn't supported, Apple's Metal API as well. It compiles the graphics shaders required to render the game itself into those formats, and there's so many of them because Unreal Engine needs to support a wide variety of different features, pretty much. So basic lighting, basic material, there's probably multiple shaders that just go into like a basic rendering material. Of course, with fast shaders, it's gonna be like single pass. So you only have one shader pretty much per surface, though you're still gonna have multiple surfaces and you have different lights. there's going to be a pre-compiling shader steps, of course, with like static lighting, for instance. So it's going to be another shader. And you probably also have shaders for like UI and basic, just Unreal Engine functionality, in fact. So it's sort of the whole reason why Unreal Engine always is compiling shaders. It's quite infamous, actually, for Unreal Engine. And oftentimes sort of let down for people who want to get into the engine. And then they have to sit through this long, boring session of compiling shaders. It's probably also the second most taxing thing with Unreal Engine. The first most would be rendering or baking. Packaging, that usually takes a while, especially if it's first time packaging. Gotta say though, 5800 X3D has very good performance, very good single thread performance at least. Multi-threading is on par or above the processor that I had previously, which was the 3700X, which is a pretty good processor too. Though it did struggle on single core performance for like older titles though. On its own, it's pretty good. All right. Almost there, and of course, Discord. Why? Why does it do this? Discord, come on. Alright, and there we go. We got the basic project setup, and it starts up on our main menu map, which is currently empty. There we go. And we're currently on medium scalability settings, so we can bump it up all the way to epic, just because we're pretty much on desktop. And we are working in Vulkan, I believe. Or no, we're working probably in DirectX 12, but we can look at it in Vulkan if I go here. There we go. We can look at it how it looks like Android Princess. Of course, this is just a blank level, so it's not going to look like anything in particular. Okay, I guess the preview platform has some work to do. Alright, I think that's, we're gonna wrap it up there. There's nothing more to look at. Alright. Thank you all for currently watching, and those of you watching the live stream replay, thank you for coming in. You should check back next week. Hopefully I'll be live actually next week for our next part when we set up the project. What set up the project? We already did that. When we set up the pawn system, basic player controls, basic input, stuff like that. We're gonna be doing that next week and be going over how blueprints work as well. So gonna be really interesting. Of course, if you are looking to work with a full-on development team, or or you already know your way around Unreal Engine, then feel free to check out the link in the center of the stream. It's actually not centered, but don't worry about that. Quantonium.net/join, fill the Google form out, and you could potentially be joining the summer's Project Laser Tag development. It'll be very exciting. All right, thank you all, and have a good day. There we go. All right, goodbye.